NAWCC.com.
A few days ago, we had the pleasure of having a visit with the National Association of Watch and Clock Collectors. Jeff Parker and Bob Geyer were here. Well, the truth is, when the conversation ended, Bob said, "Oh man, is that all the time we have? I hope to tell you about a very special clock." So they're back this morning, and the timing is perfect, Jeff and Bob, because all eyes are going to be on Washington on Monday for the inauguration. And the story that Bob had to tell was of a very special clock at the Library of Congress. So before you start to tell it, hold up your wrist, Jeff.
This one?
Nope, your other one.
Oh, this one. Yeah.
Ah, that's the one most of us have, right?
Yeah.
The Apple Watch, the little digital thing. Get your kids close, because Bob's going to talk about a great big massive clock at the Library of Congress. Is that right?
That's correct. So when Thomas Jefferson sold his library to the government, and they built the Jefferson Building in Washington, D.C., which became the Library of Congress. Inside that rotunda of that building is just a magnificent, huge building. There's a reading room that has desks all around the circumference of it, and above the entry door, there is a magnificent clock that was commissioned in 1894 by a guy named John Flanagan. And the dial of the clock is about 4 feet in diameter, and atop of that clock is Father Time. And he stands life-size, it's a sculpture, and he has a wingspan of about 10 feet. And the dial on it is jeweled, and it's a magnificent clock. So
the dial is 4 feet long?
It's big.
It's 4 feet in
You know, Thomas Jefferson never ceases to amaze you, does he? I remember when I was in the 5th grade, that's when we would take our trip to Williamsburg, and we did Monticello, and the clock that is there above the doorway, do you know what I'm talking about?
I do.
And I remember it, but I couldn't really describe it. It was like a weighted thing from what I remember.
Yeah. The weights run on cables in the walls, and that's I believe that was an 8-day clock. He winded it once a week. He built it himself, engineered and built it himself.
I wanted you to tell the story because I wanted to mention your Apple Watch, because that's what most young people know. I mean, I think it's now probably a rarity to even learn to tell time.
It is.
On a hand watch versus a digital watch.
Yeah.
And yet, throughout the beginning of man, we've been fascinated with time, from sundials, right, to however we've told it. So time really doesn't change. Our just way of marking it maybe does. Is that a fair way to put it?
It's more like the technology's changed.
Yeah.
It's evolved. We went from like big clocks to ones you could carry in your pocket to ones you can wear on your wrist, and now they just have numbers.
Right.
And a lot of time it's like asking a teenager to pick up a phone and dial it that has a dial. They don't know what to do.
It's interesting though how it did used to be a celebrated thing. I'll go back again and fly to Munich, and they have the Glockenspiel.
Yeah.
It was part of art. We don't really do that as much anymore, do we?
No, we really don't. And that's partly why they're so magnificent. Like the clock in the Library of Congress, it's not just the size and scale, it's the artistry of it.
You brought your watch back that you had last time. This is the Father Time pocket watch. So at the NAWCC, that makes me sound official, you do enjoy collecting these beautiful pieces. Are there any that you've ever found that are particularly old or rare?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I have one that's a pocket watch run by chains. It's called a Verge Fusée instead of by a spring. There's many that I've encountered, some that only have one hand, almost like a sundial. Those are the very oldest ones.
You like to reference, Jeff, a Norman Rockwell painting, and you say, I was that kid.
Yeah, there's a picture that Norman Rockwell did in the Saturday Evening Post of a little kid about probably 10 or 11 or 12 watching a watchmaker behind his bench, and it's that fascination that the kid has. It's like you can't take his eyes off it, and it really comes off the picture at you. And I tell people when they go into my office and they see that picture, that was me. I was that kid standing in front of the jewelers watching the watchmaker, and it just fascinated me.
What got you interested, Bob? Do you remember as a kid?
Oh, I remember very well. Actually, my grandmother had a mantle clock that would ring the hour on a quarter hour, and I remember waking up to it Christmas mornings.
That is so funny because, do you know, I tell my children, we had a mantle clock and it also chimed the quarter hour, and the rule was I couldn't get up until 7 o'clock, and I can remember many a sleepless Christmas Eve waiting for that 7th gong. He came!
We didn't have a lot of rules in my grandmother's house. It was a lot of fun.
If you have an old clock, I mean, this is also a time of year of cleaning out the house and that type of thing. If you stumble upon something, do y'all ever put people in touch with appraisers or anything?
All the time, not just appraisers. We have folks that would love to help restore it and get it back on its feet,
really?
make it run. Yeah. There's really 2 big chapters in our area where people could actually join or participate as much or as little as they want.
Well, now when you watch the pomp and circumstance of the inauguration on Monday and you see the Library of Congress in the distance, you won't be able to see inside of it, but you can imagine, thanks to Bob's story about that beautiful clock and a wingspan of 10 feet.
Right.
Thank you for the education.
Thanks, Julie.
If your yard looks like this, it's time to call Blewett Septic. Blewett Septic, where our integrity, punctuality, and craftsmanship